All right. We're going to begin. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent. Council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. And we are live. Today is Monday, February 6th, 2023. Today is a Committee of the Whole meeting. Before we begin the Committee of the Whole meeting, we are going to jump into individual committee meetings for this evening. And we will start with Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting with Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting is meeting today. All of the members of that committee are present. All council members are present except for Mrs. Fry, and guests as noted on my sheet. Copies of discussion, I have request legislation, a letter from Michael Teodecki, city engineer, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to enter into contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the improvement of Worcester Road North, State Street, PID 108370. This is a final resolution. Emergency wording is requested. The resolution that we passed in 2022, number 76, that one was, let me get this on. It was agreed to participate in this project. Now, this is the final that we have, is required by the state of Ohio, allowing the city of Barberton to contract and pay the state of Ohio the amount for such work. So this is paying for it and getting started on that Worcester Road North State Street project. Do I have any questions from my committee? You're scratching your nose. Oh, my committee's right here. Cool. Okay. Do I have any questions from members of council? No? From the audience, any questions regarding this? No? Do I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion.
I just went brain dead.
Yeah, you're fine.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the second piece of legislation I have is a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to enter into contract with Cargill Incorporated for the 2023 Street Road Salt Program. Emergency wording is requested. I pulled the last time that we had a contract, and that was in 2021. It was ordinance 122, 2021. It was for the 2021 and 2022 street road salt program. And it's the same, the per ton is the same as it was 2 years ago. So the only thing that's different is that our minimum, we are committed for 2,250 tons, plus or minus 20%. But the delivery cost is exactly to the penny, the same as 2021, 2022. Do I have any questions from the committee? No? From anybody on council? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Ms. Angeloff. Did we get any price checks from other businesses or for that, for pricing?
This is through the Q program. This is through the Community University Education Region. So that is all put together for the state of Ohio. So it's usually always a better when you have the state of Ohio all getting it from the same, from Q. And that's what we've done last 2 years, and probably before that. We use that purchasing.
Mr. Shreve, is there other pricing we can look
So
at?
that's one of the reasons why we are
Yes.
members of the COG, is because they do all the negotiating and the price checking for us. So that is, there's several, like Ms. Angela said, there's several communities, schools, municipalities, that actually utilize that same purchasing agreement through the CUE. So, I mean, they're the ones that do the vetting for us, and that's why we are members.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, they do the bidding for us, so it's a better than if you went out for another company. Any questions from the audience? Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Just a statement also, there's not too many companies out there that provide salt in a timely manner and the amount of salt that needs to be delivered to municipalities and universities and et cetera. So Going through that vetting process is very, very important. But in a subject matter like salt, there's not too many companies out there that do it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't
Yes.
have a question, but I remember 4 or 5 years ago when we actually were doing our own bidding before we got into this. We had a couple companies back out of filling our orders, and that's when we started with this company, if I remember correctly, that we couldn't get the salt in a timely fashion.
Yeah. Well, the city of Barberton used that CUE a lot. Even like years ago, there were certain things that they bid on that was through CUE. So, yeah, I guess there isn't a lot of companies that have salt, so. But apparently they have a lot of salt because there's no increase per ton on salt. So that's a good thing, maybe. Any other questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to call for this?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We have no pending legislation, and I'll open it up to the committee for any miscellaneous. Do you have anything? Any council members miscellaneous? Anybody in the audience? None? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
And we are adjourned at 6:00. What does that say? 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angela. Next up, Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is 6:08 PM on February 6th. I would like to call to order the Environmental Health and Social Services Committee. February 6th, 6:08 PM, we are in council chambers. It's myself as chair, Mr. Jaber, and Mrs. Angela. All council members are present except Mrs. Fry, and then all others are as noted on my sheet. We do not have any new requested legislation. I'll open it up for miscellaneous discussion. Anyone from the committee or council body? No? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that, ma'am.
We are adjourned at 6:09 PM, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, February 6, 2023, 6:09 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Jaber, and President Greer. All other council members are also present with the exception of Mrs. Fry, who is absent. All other guests are noted here on my agenda sheet. For topics of discussion, I have no new requests for legislation, nor any pending legislation. I will open it up to miscellaneous discussion from my committee. Is there any miscellaneous discussion? Other council members? Okay. Anything from the gallery? All right. I do want to say one thing is that we are looking for a new assistant planning director since Mr. Pete Worsler was chosen to step in as the planning director. So that is happening now. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And
I'll
a second?
that, ma'am.
Alrighty. We are adjourned at 6:10 PM.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Next up is City Utilities for a special meeting with Mrs. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call the city utilities to order for a special meeting. It is 6:10 PM. We have myself as chair and Erica Bailey. Mrs. Fry is absent this evening. All other members are present. We have one request for legislation, a letter from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Services, requesting legislation authorizing the mayor to utilize the 3 one-year options offered in the contract authorized by Ordinance 8/2018 and enter into a contract with Kimball Recycling and Disposal, Inc. They're requesting emergency wording, and this has to do with the trash pickup. We had an optional 3-year at one at a time. Would you like to embellish on that?
So with our 5-year contract signed with Kimball in 2018, it allowed for 3 one-year extension options. So what I would like to do is go ahead and plan on utilizing our 3 one-year options. And we've negotiated the price for this year, and then would like to tie the next 2 years to Consumer Price Index, which has a ceiling index floor, which is negotiated from us through the company. And with that, then there's also another piece that you will see that's amending our codifieds for the monthly trash fee. So I don't know if are there any questions regarding any of the piece of legislation that's in front of you? I mean, our current contract had increases 2.5% per year.
Okay.
And, yes, President.
I guess the general question is that Kimball did are raising their fees faster or on, like, are they not stable in their fees? Or we just kind of, did they raise their, you said their contract was 2 years, but they not renew for 2 years again?
So we are looking at doing a 3-year renewal, but with that 3-year renewal it is not locking in a fixed percentage. What they would like to do is tie it to the Consumer Price Index, to not fall below 3 and to not go over 6. Now that's for 2 years. So year 1 is a fixed increase, which is 6%. So since 2018, the Consumer Price Index has increased. So in 18 it was 3.96%. In 19 it was 3.22. In 20 it was 3.49. 21 it was 4.74. And 22 it was 5.17. So with all of those increases, our change across the board was 2.5% each year. Consumer Price Index change was 20.59%. Our total change was 12.5%. So we're ahead of the ball game when it comes to the increases that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has seen over the last 5 years. So again, 6% increase year 1, and then tied to the Consumer Price Index for the next 2, and we would be entering into a 3-year deal with Kimball, which allows us to maintain their service with their cans. It's unlimited service, up to 2 yards extra. So yes, it would be continuing this contract, and then in 2 years we would start negotiating after that 3rd year expires to replace and look for a new contract.
So right now, we pay $17.69, but we will be paying $22.11. Is that how?
The current rate is $20.86.
$20.86.
And then if you're on the residential relief
Okay.
program, it is $17.61.
That's the relief program.
Okay. So it's going to go up $2 and some cents.
It is, yeah, it's $1 and some change.
Okay.
$1.25.
Well, that's not bad.
I didn't actually write that map down.
Joyce, that
Yes,
is,
ma'am.
that's the relief program.
Right.
That's
I
less
got-
than what we paid.
Yeah. I realized that after the fact. I'm slow. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
And if you guys recall in the past, we negotiate contracts that you could sell out more than just what was in the bins, but you had to go get a tag.
Right.
So that kind of it sounded like a good idea, created some other issues, and with this contract that we want to renew, the tags are gone, you just set it out, it's kind of unlimited up to 2 additional,
It's 2 cubic yards.
2
yeah.
cubic
So
yards.
It's a small, a truck bed worth of trash.
and so, you know, we still get calls, hey, where can I get these tags at? No, you're already paying for it. So just kind of want to throw that out there again, that we do have additional trash that you can put out there outside the bins.
Right.
And if you guys remember in the years past, we discussed a lot of different communities and how they set theirs up and this and that. Pretty involved, the discussions that we had. But it's important to keep that fact in mind.
Well, $1.25 is not astronomical.
When you have fuel charges that have gone up, you have labor costs that have gone up, I mean, everything is kind of,
So in 2018, the annual price per gallon of diesel fuel was $3.29. In 2022, the annual average cost of a gallon of diesel fuel was $5.18. So I mean, there was quite an increase with fuel costs too. And that's something that over this 5-year contract, they've always honored their contract and never asked for anything more. So now we're at the renewal year is when they're asking for their increase.
Yes, sir.
Just did you reach out to Republic Waste again or no?
What I did is I actually went to a few websites, some other communities, looked at their pricing. The problem with that is you don't know where they're at in their contract phase. The closest locale that I know of for certain is Wadsworth. They have their own municipal service. Their municipal service costs $17 for one 95-gallon can. You can only fill that one 95-gallon can. Everything else has got to be either hauled by yourself to the transfer station, or you pay $7 extra to get a second can, which brings you to $24 in cost, which is still, it's more than what we're looking at increasing ours to. So I mean, no, I didn't call any other companies. At this point in time, I think it is best for us to continue at least one more year. If we don't want to sign the full 3-year contract, we can do it a year at a time. But then you lose that, the year 2 and 3. We could then vet and possibly get a contract, a longer contract after year 1, if that is also another route that we could go.
Before we move forward with this, can you do that, make that phone call for us tomorrow?
Um,
I mean, it's not my committee. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I mean,
I know that if he starts the bidding process, we have to do a full-blown bidding process. You don't just get to call one company and ask them, is that correct?
Yes.
You have to put it out there for everybody to bid, and that's a 6-month process.
why didn't we do that 6 months ago?
Because we had this option, Mr. Jaber. This is why you add this option in there, is to keep our prices down. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
and again, I mean, if you look at Consumer Price Index, which is a nationally recognized, I mean, it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They look at everything from a grain of salt to rice to trash service to fuel cost to, I mean, we are still, again, not seeing the increases in this contract that they have shown on, through the Consumer Price Index. So, again, we're still ahead of the ballgame when it comes to our costs.
So we're declaring this emergency, though. I mean, if we knew about this 6 months ago, why didn't we look into this 6 months ago? It just says, put it out there as a
We
bid.
started discussing with Kimball, knowing that there's 3 one-year options in this contract. So I mean, it's not like we just started talking about it last week. We were planning on exercising these 3 1 years. That's what the original ordinance
Contract.
2018 authorizes us to utilize these 3 1-year options.
Has any other council members? Go ahead.
I'm waiting on you.
Has any other council members got any complaints from constituents about Kimball? Have you got a lot of those? I
Yeah.
personally have gotten a lot of them myself. That's why I want to see, maybe see what's going
Go
on.
ahead,
Can I-
Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you. My question was going to be, and maybe you know this too, is there a way that residents can get some sort of credit if they have an issue, a repeated issue. I have a few residents that their trash is missed quite often, and they at first will say, "Oh, I'm sorry we missed you. We'll come get it tomorrow." They don't come. We'll get it next week with the next round. Is there a way for us to credit them for that?
So those are things, though, that first call is to Kimball, second call should be to Vanessa. If they're
Okay.
not getting resolution through Kimball, and we don't know that they're not getting resolution through Kimball, there's not a whole lot that we can do.
Okay.
We do keep a complaint log that is recorded. I mean, I can go back and tell you whether or not they complain. Kimball is also supposed to be submitting a complaint log to us when they receive those complaints. We've been working closely with their operations manager, trying to get, again, I've started reading this contract about 6 months ago. I don't know it quite yet, cover to cover, but we're trying to hold them to a certain standard that maybe they weren't being held to in the past. So I've been working closely with their operations manager, trying to improve a lot of that stuff. We're making some headway through Vanessa and their customer service. A lot of it is their customer service. We would like to see a better response from them.
Mr. Lawson?
As the person that dealt with the trash the last 20 years, Kimball's actually been the best. Waste management was absolutely horrendous. Then we had Republic. Republic was terrible. Their customer service was horrible. We had to do everything. Kimball actually, with my dealings with them and calling them directly, they have been the best with actually responding and trying to do what you ask them to do, but then again, you just have to stay on top of them.
The other thing I want to point out, and it's not an excuse, but during the last 3 years, nobody has employees. Everybody complains that they can't get drivers. And during the pandemic, they were down probably to 50% of the amount of people they needed. That's not an excuse, that's just a statement. Mrs. Angela.
And I'm going to piggyback what Mr. Lawson said, 20 years working in this service and with the trash. I'm personally very pleased with Kimball. You could put out a couch. I have people calling me, can I put this out? And I just said, well, why don't you call them, give them your address, and let them know that that's what they have out there. But they have no problems with, picking that up. I had a truck that broke down last week or the week before last from the house, and he actually came up and knocked on the door and said, I'm sorry. He said, I called for emergency, somebody to come fix the truck, and I said, it's fine, where's that? It didn't leak any oil or anything of that sort, or hydraulics or anything of that sort, but I thought that was kind of, I don't remember ever getting a call when the trucks broke down. So I am very pleased with Kimball, and the people that I talk to, they're happy with it too.
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to agree. I think Kimball's fantastic. I haven't had any issues personally. I just know that there have been a few residents that have called me with complaints, and I just wanted to know if there was any way, because, if you're not getting what you're paying
Right.
for, I can understand it would be frustrating, but what they offer, being able to put a little extra out compared to Republic and who we've had in the past,
Right. And if-
big picture, it's a lot better.
We have to tell them to, first of all, call Kimball, then call the office. Because it's one thing for us to complain about it, but we can't get refunded if we don't go through the proper channels. I know we have one person that lives the last house in the city of Barberton, and they never get their trash picked up. They never do. It seems like that they get passed by all the time. And they just want to go out and throw their barrel right at the truck. And that's been every year, no matter who picked them up. They've complained of that. So, but they're the last house in the limits. Yes, sir, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Director, without these options, does this contract expire in March?
contract would expire in March, yes.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Mr. Mayor?
Just want to reiterate, it's been mentioned a few times, but if constituents are calling you and they've talked to Kimball or they not, whatever, we need to log that complaint.
Right.
Because when we have meetings with them and they ask us, how's everything going? I'd like to have a list of what the complaints are and who's made them and see if there are repeat complaints so we can address that. Just this past weekend, we had some meetings last week with Kimball, and the director of operations, I believe it was, made personal phone calls to several residents who we had a long list of complaints. And so, the residents are very satisfied that the director of operations called, had a truck out there that very next day, and we'll move forward and try to get better service moving forward for those residents. But if we don't know about it, then we can't, take that complaint to a higher power at Kimball.
And to be honest with you, so the director of operations offered to come in too. So I mean, if you guys have questions, I think he'll be here. I can have him here next Monday, to where you guys can ask questions and he can explain ins and outs of, their operations, their contract, what they plan on doing, answer questions on how they can better serve our community. I think he's more than willing to do that. So I would be happy to set that up also.
The most important thing is not about, service is great, we've got complaints here and there, the constituents, but I wish you would have, 6 months ago, you would have done that bid out, or made that phone call. That would have made me feel a bit better about this decision.
5 years ago, they put these 3 one-year options in this contract so that we didn't have to go to bid after this 5-year contract expired. Had these 3 one-year options been in that legislation in 2018, we probably wouldn't even be having this discussion because it would be, they would have already been included in legislation. But we would like to, as a city, exercise these options with a company that is providing good service at an affordable price that is still below consumer pricing.
That we know
Yes,
of from
ma'am.
online,
I'm
correct?
comfortable voting this out of committee today.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just wanted to state my opinion. Regardless if we have someone come talk next week or whatnot.
Right, yes.
I'm comfortable doing so.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we will have this out of committee. Thank you. We have another letter from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Service, requesting legislation to amend the Barberton Codified Ordinance, Part 10, Title 6, Chapter 1060.08, Refuge Collection and Disposal, Residential Payment Fees, and that's the attached letter. So we will be changing the fees effective March 1st, 2023 to the 2211. Do I have a motion to call for that?
I'll make a motion.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
And I will second it. We are adjourned at, I can't see the
6:30.
6:30. Oh, it's a big one over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Last but not least, Finance and Personnel with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel, it is 6:30 on Monday, February 6, 2023, in council chambers. The committee consisting of Councilors Coburn, Thompson, President Greer, and myself as chair are present. All else noted. Before we go into topics of discussion, want to continue, since one of the requests is for calling for the operating budget, want to continue our budget presentations. Mr. Mayor, I believe you have the law, the parks, and the utilities for us tonight.
Yes, sir. Ready?
The floor is yours.
All right. I didn't talk to anyone beforehand, but
Law can go first if they'd like, just to get the ball rolling here.
maybe Lisa's gonna go first.
I beat you to it. Quick.
Ladies first.
Yeah, sure. Okay. There isn't a lot of significant changes to my budget year after year, so does anybody have any questions?
Page
Where
number,
you at?
please.
I wouldn't have the foggiest idea of what page it's on. I don't even know how to tell you. This is 41535111. What? I don't know. I don't know what page it's on. I don't have the whole budget. I just have my pages. I don't walk around with an entire book of the budget. Thank you,
54,
Jeremy.
I'm right there at 52 here.
okay,
I don't even have the foggiest idea.
54.
So year to year, there aren't many changes in my budget. Typically, my budget, much like a school district, my budget's primarily based with staffing. Again, due to changes in the way that the courts operate, we needed to add an additional prosecutor. So we have 3 full-time prosecutors at my office now. One of them is assigned primarily to arraignments and initial appearances, so that prosecutor is in court in the mornings from 8:30 till about 11, and then from about 1 to 2:30 every day, just doing initial appearances and arraignments and making bond arguments. And that would be that person's primary role. And then they provide backup and do the direct indictment and felony cases. And that is that prosecutor's primary role. The other 2 are the primary prosecutors for each of the judges. So, other than that, the second half of the budget would be just kind of the normal things that we do. Like office supplies and copiers and phones and things like that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You're awesome. I have no questions. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
That was
I'll
easy.
bring up Mr. Weaver.
Yep, that was easy.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's start on page 147. What I'll be talking about is on water and sewer, revenues for both, administration budgets for both, water plant, wastewater plant, as well as industrial pretreatment. On revenues, as you know, businesses, the economy was all pretty severely impacted by COVID in recent years, and we're part of that too. We operate off of user rates, so we saw a pretty good impact, with our businesses, industry in town during that time frame. The good news is we've now pretty much stabilized. We're doing much better. Revenues are coming in pretty steady. Delinquencies are not rising like they are. We're seeing some falling. So it's that part's all good. We've also seen some growth. The growth from, as you know, many new houses have gone in. If you take a look at the sewer revenue on sewer tap-in fees, and that's a reflection of new connections. It shows $327,760 was our actual income from these new connections in 2022. I'm projecting just a couple $100,000 this upcoming year. That I imagine that'll slow down a little bit, but that represents about 200 plus additional homes or accounts. So that's significant. So this upcoming year, we'll be seeing the benefit of those paying for 12 months, plus seeing some additional revenue there from those. So that was all good news. We're seeing a similar bump over on the water side. Down on charges for services, you see we're projecting $5 million. We was close to that last year. I think we'll see a little bit of bump from that. We'll see last year's rate increase will go for 12 months this year, so we'll get a little bit more for that, as well as all these new accounts working. So I think that's a conservative number looking forward to '23. Dumping fees, $300,000. Projecting, we had a little bit more than that last year, and I think that actually may grow. That comes from hauled waste. Much of it's from septic haulers. We also get hauled waste from leachate from landfills, and we even have some come from some dairies and things that are out of town. Those fit us pretty well. As you know, years ago, we used to have Ryder Dairy. Our wastewater plant was designed to treat dairy waste. We've got those large oxidation towers you'll notice when you know, out front. So we treat that pretty well. So last month, we brought in an additional $15,000 for that. Not sure how much we'll see over the course of the year, but I'm optimistic we'll see a nice bump this year in hauled waste. You know, county billing Vanderhoof, that is what we charge the county for bringing in, waste to us. That is pumped directly to us. And industrial surcharges, we charge industry based on strength of waste. If they have a waste that is 10 times stronger than what you're discharging from your home, costs more to treat. We have to put more air into it, you know, run blowers more chemicals, things like that. So there is an increased cost, and that's where that line comes from. And you'll see some lines for assessment, collections, miscellaneous. And then at the bottom, that's note proceeds. And notes, if you look on down the other side of the administration budget, you'll see where we're paying off a note for $400,000 and we're rebuying for $350,000. And they're one-year notes. Most of that was for our meter system. Is there any questions on the sewer income? Okay, well, let's move on to administration then. The administration accounts, looking at wages first, personal services, you see administrative salaries, and just below that, clerk and engineering support. That's just a separation of salaried personnel and those that are in the bargaining unit. So the administration of the utilities department, there are many people that are involved in that. You know, it's, you know, we pay small portions of people over in HR, the mayor's office, and finance, law. There's a combination of many. So there's about 13 people that are broke up into that number. If you add up all the percentages, it's actually less than 4 people. So it's, we're just paying small percentages there. So we're paying our fair share, you know, of the administration of, you know, for the work that they do for the utilities department. And then the rest of that is all the associated costs with wages. The rest of this budget that is here, the operating budget, is broken into many, and I'll just talk about the categories rather than going down line by line. But this takes care of billing. You know, Jeremy has the bills printed, sends those out for that. And then there's postage to send those out. We have liability insurance that comes out of there. Our telephones, copiers, public notices when we're out for a bid or anything that we are, sometimes we're required to make public notices on changes in our permits. And then for EPA permits, we have permits for our water plant, also for our wastewater plant. This budget would cover the wastewater plant permit to operate. Also for IT, and then for Swisscom, you know, that takes care of our IT services. So those are all taken care of in these administration budgets. Actually, when you get over to the water side, it pretty much mirrors this budget. It's very similar in number, all, you know, pretty much down the line. You know, because many of the same people are paid from it in the same percentages, and then you see many of the same splits on postages and things like that. It's just dividing it up between water and sewer. Any questions on that administration budget? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Director. I just seen a line item here, the Norton Sewer System contract didn't have any numbers, and I'm sure it's because it's, but it reminded me, did does any of what we just talked about cover the contract that we have with Norton, the agreement with the sewer system that we actually get?
On
money
that,
from?
we had, by agreement, we paid Norton $75,000 a year for the Norton truck. They still had debt service that was on it. We took ownership of that. That was for a 5-year period that is paid for. And that line is where I originally put that in. And then Jeremy felt it should be under debt service. He's correct. I think even auditors, wanted it there. So it shifted over there, but that is now behind us.
Okay.
And, go ahead.
I believe that's a separate what I'm talking about. Wasn't there a deal that Barberton did? We bought Norton's debt or to get them out and they were supposed to pay us back?
Oh, well, yes. What it is, Norton can't get loans on the sewer system because the sewer system actually belongs in its entirety to the city of Barberton, even all the sewer lines that are in the city of Norton, all that infrastructure. But let's say like Nash Heights is, I think, the one that you're referring to. It's right around, it's about $300,000 a year, right around there, for the debt service for that. And what it is, we take the loan, they make the payment. So there's a reimbursement line in there to where we get reimbursed for those payments.
That's what I'm.
I think that, I'm pretty sure that's
And
what it is.
we're not there yet. So.
Right.
I just seen that one line item, that's why I was.
Yes, and we're not paying that, they pay that, or we'll pay it and get reimbursed. So that doesn't impact our users at all. And how they get paid back would be through assessment, and then they use their rollback tax for that. They use that for their infrastructure, that type of thing. So that they're paying it all with those funds. Anything else on that? Yes.
The EPA assessment tax, last year was 8,000, and this year it looks like this budget's 16,000.
Yes.
Why was that double?
If it happens because if we just go over by a gallon, over 5 million gallons a day average, the fee doubles. It's a break point for Ohio EPA. If you're under it, it's 8. If you go over it, it's 16. And we went over. So that's what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any more questions? Okay. Then the next one is debt service. And this is all, this is Jeremy's area. But if there's any questions on that, I'll do my best to answer. And thankfully, Jeremy's in the back to back me up. Anything? Okay.
Well,
Yes,
I
sir.
got another question, and it's related to the Norton thing again.
Sure.
And the reason why I was just asking is I know that we weren't invoicing Norton for a little bit, and then we invoiced them for a lot of money, and that was recently resolved. Have we resolved, does this reflect us getting money, that money? Or, I know our last year, we didn't get money
Invoice, and
from
I'm
them.
not sure, do you know which one they're talking about, or?
Yeah, I think I know, if it's the one just recently with Norton.
Yeah,
Okay, that was on the water side of things.
okay.
Um, But yeah, that's all
Okay.
caught up, and so that's, going forward, that's gonna be reimbursed by Norton as well. At the same time, they reimburse us for the sewer.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
I'm familiar with that, but I'm sorry, I didn't make the connection when you asked the question. Yes. Anything else on debt service? Okay. Well, let's move on to the treatment plant. Same thing again, we have the wages. We have 15 people that are based out at our wastewater treatment plant. Actually, 11 and a half of them are paid out of this budget. We all, at the wastewater treatment plant, we house our maintenance people who spread out into the city. They do the water plant, they do work on our towers, pump stations throughout the city, so their wages are broke up into sewer collection, water distribution, and water treatment plant as well. But we pay for 11.5 here. And some of the biggest impacts in the past several years has been in chemical cost. We actually have seen less of it here at the wastewater plant that we did in water. It was huge. The reason we saw less here is that we worked with our industry to lower a chemical that added phosphorus to their discharge. When we did that, we was able to cut back on alum, which was very expensive. So you're not seeing much of an impact here. Plus, we really optimized the feed of our bleach, our chlorine, hypochlorite, and into our waste stream as well. So by optimizing and bringing that phosphorus under control, we've seen much less impact on the wastewater plant budget than we do in the water. So, but it's supply chain stuff, parts, supplies, repair parts, all of that stuff, impact the budget, but they've done a pretty good job of keeping that under control. Anything on that operating budget? Anything stand out to you? Any questions? No? Okay, down to capital. That $10,000 is for roof repairs on the storage building. We've got a storage building there that's actually covered on, 3 sides and a roof. And because of that, sometimes it blow out some panels on the roof. So we've got to have some of that replaced. And the $112,000 covers a number of things that has to do with equipment and furnishings. Our grit pumps. And pumping grit's pretty rough stuff, so you get a lot of wear and tear. What we call EQ pumps. They're large. We have over 100 pumps in the wastewater treatment plant. They're all throughout there. So there's always doing maintenance on those. The dewater sludge pumps, they're what you call a progressive cavity type pump, and always rebuilding those. Polymer feed pumps, so chemical feed pumps. Decant pumps, which it goes from wet wells where water decants to, then we pump it back to the head of the treatment plant. And VFDs, those are variable frequency drives. And Gorman Roop, the one that's before it, those Gormans actually are sludge pumps as well. They just used for transferring from one well to another. And then more chemical feed pumps to do with bisulfite. We have chlorine pumps, put chlorine in, and then we feed bisulfite to take it back out. And the reason we do that, once we discharge to the receiving stream, you can't have chlorine in it. You've got to pull it back out because it can have an impact on fish or any kind of wildlife that is out there. So we're paying to put it in and paying to take it out, after it's done its job. So that's the capital operating. Any questions on those? Okay. And then industrial pretreatment. At the wastewater treatment plant, part of our permit, and we are permitted, inspected, regulated by Ohio EPA. One of their requirements is we have an industrial pretreatment program. And we regulate them and actually write permits for them just like EPA does for us. They're inspected on an annual basis, and we sample them. That's how we determine the strength of their waste. That's how we bill for that extra strength surcharge. All of that is required, and that is very heavily audited by Ohio EPA. They come in and go through every paper, just tear apart the file cabinets and go through that on a regular basis. So we have an approved program. It's operating well, and this is where it's funded. We have the assistant manager at the treatment plant. Half his time is on pretreatment. That's why this number is lower. Then we have half of an operator that goes out and does collecting samples. So it's we have people, doing multiple, duties assigned to different things in the plant and in the system. So that is that program. Any questions on pretreatment? No. Then let's jump over to water. So that is on page 155. And you'll see that, that $392,319, the actual from 2022. That represents about 170 new accounts. It's a little bit less than on the water side because we have some of it is our sewer-only accounts. So we had a few more on the sewer side than we did on the water. Still very significant as far as revenue there. And I'm estimating that those will drop some going into next year. If you look at that Norton loan reimbursement there in 22, that's the number you're talking about. In fact, I actually called Jeremy about that today and had a question on it, but it didn't click when you asked a question. I apologize. And there will be a number go in there for this year. I don't know what that number is, but there will be some additional income from that. I estimate 7 million that we'll see from user charges. Of course, those user charges are what you see on your water and sewer bill. You know, this would be the water side, and so that is the heart of what we operate on, but you can see there's many other sources of income, such as bulk water. We actually sell the bulk water that goes into tankers at the wastewater treatment plant. We're on a 12-inch water line there, and we like to see it turn over, so it was a good location to do that. Keeps our chlorine residuals up at the treatment plant. Sale of meters, you know, when somebody has a new account, there's charges for everything it takes to set those up, like tapping the main, putting in a meter, for the meter sending unit, and then what we call the SDC that's reflected on the top, our system development charge. But the meter charges are reflected here. And then the materials for labor are there, and turn on and turn off. Unfortunately, at times we have to turn water off. And so, there's a $30 charge for turning it off and on. And that's reflected in that line. Any questions on those lines? Yes.
Thank you, Director. Was the Norton surcharge budgeted minus 60,000?
On the charges in Norton, they're on the water fee part, they're paying 1.5 times our rate. We, by agreement, we charge 1.225 times the Barberton rate. So there's a 27.5% difference there that is charged and returned to Norton. And what that helps them do is to pay for things like that reimbursement that you're talking about, plans for extending water lines out on 261. And so they're building that infrastructure with this 27.5% that gets returned to them. But by agreement, that's not our money. We do collect it for them. And so that's returned to them.
Thank you.
And you'll see the same things there on assessments. I think we should see more than that on assessments this year as well, because the last couple of years, we've really taken it easy on people, pretty much just assessed things that was delinquent finals, some sewer-only accounts, because you can't shut those off, and as you know, for quite a while during COVID, we couldn't shut anybody off, so that's when delinquencies really rose. So any questions on revenue for water? No? Okay. Now, on page 156 is the administration account for water. And as I said, this budget will look very, very similar to the one on sewer, because it pretty much is. It's just that other side of what we pay for administration services, same things like finance and law and HR, and it's our way of paying our fair share. The majority is paid elsewhere, but we pay for our portion. We have over 50 people in utilities, and so we pay our part of that. Finance pays our bills. They're working with all of our POs. Everything goes through that. So there's a big part of what they do that is dedicated to the utilities department. So this is how we pay that back. And then again, these lines will look very similar to the on the sewer side, where it covers village, postage, insurance, phones, copiers. Even we take even our computer purchases and things we take out of this area. The public notices, and this one is the permit to operate for the water treatment plant, and so that's pretty much that budget, and it'll look very similar to that last one. You see anything there of interest that you could comment on? Nope. Okay. All right, and so this is the debt. Next page at 157 is the debt service on the water side. And you'll also see there's one line there for capital too. It's that same amount in water sewer, $5,000. And many times that goes to something in this building, So, so this is just all of our water capital, and so we're still working on things like the Wolf Creek Dam. There, you'll see some debt service in there that has to do with work that we're doing on the dam. But, so hopefully we'll have some news in the next month or two about our FEMA grant that we've applied for. We have been recommended for that grant by Ohio Emergency Management, and that's been sent on to to FEMA, federal, and they take a long time. This has been, so it's really been quite a while. We expected to hear by now, but it's just the way the process works. And then I can move on to water plant if there's not anything else. That's on page 158. And again, this is, we have about 13 people out at the water treatment plant, and so this is their wages, breakdowns on that, all their health and life, everything that you've seen in all the other personal services accounts. Less splits on this one, but they do pay portions of maintenance mechanics and out there. And then on their operating budget. And the big one that stands out there, I'll just bring it out to you before you ask, is the chemical budget. And chemicals came in very high. We bid, these are bid, it's competitive bid. We went out for them a little earlier than normal because going into the budget year, we knew it was going to be a severe impact. Chlorine is a big one. They feed more than what we do, and the cost is went up over well over 100,000 just in chlorine alone. It was 80,000 last year. We estimated to be 187,000 this year. Carbon, which we use activated carbon. It helps, taste and odor, and at the headworks of our settling tanks. That's going up 25,000, over 100,000 on ferric chloride, which is a coagulant. More than $50,000 on that one is sodium hypochlorite. So that one even went up. So unfortunately, that has really jumped. And we did put in $100,000, safety on that as well. We're covered with that. Hopefully, we won't need it. But with any operation, you just don't know what your chemical demand is going to be. It's all going to depend on weather. We are a surface water treatment plant. We're not a well plant. When you get a big rain, you'll see more sediment and things come into the reservoir, so it takes more treatment. And so different loadings that we have to deal with. So it depends on those things. We may have to feed more activated carbon if we have an algae bloom during the summer. And we always have to end up feeding a little bit more. We do it preemptively to make sure we don't have an issue. But we do those, so those are issues that we run into that just don't allow us to nail it down within even $100,000. So there is a little bit of safety in that, but and hopefully it'll come in a lot lower. Any other questions on water plant? See any lines there that kind of jump out at you? Then I can go down to the last of that, and let me see here. Okay, I'm missing my list on all the capital, but there's buildings. There was some work they was doing on a barn they have in the back, with roof and all that. There's some building improvements. On equipment furnishings, the biggest one has to do with high service pumps. High service pumps pump the water into town. That's how, we have to get it up to the towers. Once it reaches the towers, then that's the gravity gives us the pressure to feed the rest of the system. But without those pumps, you have no water. And so we've got a number of those in there. We've rebuilt some in the past couple of years. We're going through a process. We're going through each one. One we find we're going to have to replace completely and rebuild another. And so after we get the next rebuild, we're going to replace the largest pump. It's a 6 MGD pump that will need to be hopefully rebuilt, not replaced. But that is what we're facing there, and that's why it's $180,000. They're very large pumps. Is there anything else on those? There is a vehicle that's on there. They have a vehicle that's over 20 years old, and they keep they keep pushing and using it. But I think we've about come to the end of the life on that one. So they do pretty good getting the use out of their vehicles.
Anything else?
Yep, that's everything that I've got. The rest of it, Mr. Shreve is going to go through water distribution, sewer collection, those. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Appreciate it.
Nice seeing you.
Appreciate it. Good to be seen.
Mayor, you want me to cover collection and distribution real quick and then parks? So we're gonna go back to the collection system real quick. So that's page 152. Just because this is the order that Denny went in, so we'll go back to the sewage system. So this is all at the top. It's personnel services. So again, wages covers several different people in distribution and collection department. Those fluctuate every year due to your overtime, call outs, emergency calls, stuff like that. And then as we go down through, no real major changes. So there's no questions on the operations and maintenance or the personnel services. I can touch on the capital. Capital is going to be, so equipment and furnishings. We are looking at replacing some old outdated equipment. I mean, we've always got need for new backhoes. Sewer jet truck is a major one on there. That is going to be split in the, I believe that is coming out of the vehicles line. So a sewer jet truck, last time I got a quote for a price, it's $560,000 to replace that truck. So you're talking $500,000. We did vet several different companies. Now that'll be something that'll have to go to bid again. But so half of that purchase would be in that vehicles line. The $90,000, I believe, is we've discussed a manhole camera, which allows us to inspect a manhole camera, look for faults and problems and stuff. It goes in. It works together with our sewer inspection camera, which goes through the lines. So manhole inspection is different than sewer line inspection. All of these are all important. EPA wants you looking at a 20% of your system every year. So that's something that we're trying to move forward and develop a program that allows us to meet their recommendation. The infrastructure sewer lines in the capital, that is our infrastructure improvement program. So that you'll see that line item when we get to the distribution system, which is water. You'll see a line item there that also. So we're looking at not just replacing water lines on roads, but we want to look into the sewer lines. And if the sewer lines are failing, they're 100 years old and they need upgraded, this will allow us to start targeting some of those areas too. Are there any questions with the collection? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to distribution. And it is page 159. So this page, again, personnel services, that is, there is fluctuation built in there for emergency calls. Again, with distribution system, that's all of our water lines, fire hydrants, which do occasionally get hit. Water lines break and need repaired. So our emergency response is built into those wages. Again, it fluctuates year to year. Down through the operations and maintenance, most of those you will see mirror last year. There's not a whole lot of change there. The repair and maintenance supplies did, so we spent $184,000, we budget $225. Again, those change depending on how many water mains we have, how many fire hydrants fail, the kind of stuff that needs repaired or replaced. Professional services, you'll see we only spent $19,000 last year. We budgeted $70,000. Those are when something arises to where we have to, for instance, the Worcester Road North storm sewer that was 100 years old. They ground some of the pavement off. It failed. Something like that could happen similar with our water system. So if a major catastrophe happens and we have to hire somebody to come in, that professional services allows us to tackle that kind of stuff. Are there any questions with either one of these two? And say, because the next page is the capital purchases budget. So we can go to the capital. So equipment, that is a portion of a pickup truck. The $325,000 that you'll see there, which is an increase from last year's $25,000, that is the other portion of the sewer jet truck. And then vehicles is the portion of the pickup truck. That $80,000. Trying to think what that. I would have to go back and look at my notes, but that's going to be equipment, replacing equipment, aging equipment in the park. Yeah.
Water meters and MIUs.
Yep. So we added that line item a couple of years ago to purchase because water meter, the cost is rising. MIUs, so those are the ways that we meter the water and get the readings from remotely from the homes. And then the infrastructure water lines is the other portion of the infrastructure improvement program that I touched on with the sewer collection system, but this is the water side. So are there any questions on capital purchases out of distribution? All right, I will let Don jump up here because he's raring and ready to go for parks.
All right, I have 6 accounts that I work out of. The first one's on page 72. Big changes. The training and travel is for tuition reimbursement. And then down in improvements other than buildings, that's for the park cameras. Walking path material in the restroom at either McCafferty or Decker or even both. I'm working with planning on getting some money to get bathrooms at both parks. Any questions? All right. My next account is my 221 account on page 103. Also in that the account we just left, I actually put money in for new computers for our computer lab too. At the center, we're going to get some gaming computers. $221 is the sports complex. There's more money added in there for more clay for the ball fields. Any questions? All right. My next account would be my 235. That's on page 110. No changes, nothing added to that. from last year. Next account is on page 131. It's a beautification account. This account we use for Mum Festival and the flower beds throughout the city. Nothing changed in that account. Any questions? We did get Aries, who used to donate the mum cuttings in the past. They actually stopped donating the last 3 years. This year, they actually donated the cuttings. That actually saved us quite a bit of money on that.
When you say this year, do you mean 2023?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then my last account is on page 176. The Senior Center Trust Fund. And nothing additional to that account. Any questions?
Thank you, Director. With the cameras, do you foresee them going forward soon?
Yes, I'm just waiting for the budget to pass so I can start moving forward. You'll see some legislation coming through. I'm also working with planning. He has some money to help out with it too, so I'm ready to move forward with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Director, I'm getting a lot of questions about College Street, the insurance, the timetable to clean that up.
Yeah, I just
We
got.
have to know when we can do that.
Well, I just got permission on Thursday to tear that out. So next week, we're gonna do that internally to tear that out.
Okay.
I've been on that too. I
I
mean,
know,
it's
I
an
know.
eyesore.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, but
We were waiting to hear back from the insurance company on everything, get that satisfied.
next week, I already talked to our guys. I'm getting a dumpster, and then they said they can get it on the schedule next week, weather permitting.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. Thanks for everything you've been doing as a director. I mean, you've been full force with it, and since you've been on board, it seems like it's moving forward with the parks. We appreciate the you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoy being here and working for the Barberton community.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Director.
All right, so while we're talking about parks, let's go to parks maintenance. So that is page 75. So 75 covers all of our employees that work in the parks, work on maintenance of the parks. You'll see the wages, the maintenance employee salaries. Actually, there's an increase. So we have budgeted another employee, a new hire, that we're hoping, as long as revenues and everything stay up, we can bring another employee on board to help take care of our parks. There's also, some of that increase is also due to hiring an employee just this past year. Part of their wages come out of this salary. Seasonal maintenance, that includes a lot of our seasonals that do the weed eating, the mowing, picking up trash, that kind of stuff in the parks that the union so graciously allow us to utilize some of our young residents to help out. And then if you look down through here, everything else is pretty much has stayed the same. We don't have any major capital purchases this year. We replaced some equipment last year, as you can see in the equipment furnishings from the previous year, and then made some improvements to the building, but no planned capital purchases this year. So is there any questions on that particular budget? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director. And Mr. Mayor, do you have anything else for us?
Nope, unless there's any other questions, if this is called for and approved out of committee. Still, any questions that pop up throughout the week before passage next week? Just send them our way.
Does anybody, before we move forward, anybody have any questions for the mayor right now to research for you?
I have none.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all to all the directors. We're going to move forward with request for legislation. Letter from Jeremy Flaker, Finance Director, requesting legislation for the 2023 operating budget for the period beginning January 1st, 2023. 3 readings, emergency wording requested. I believe we've been talking about it for 4 weeks now, so, but I will ask, are there any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
You, those in favor?
Aye.
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 This was requested 3 readings, however, we have another week before the first reading now that it's passed committee. I will be willing to entertain suspension barring conversations with each individual council member if they're comfortable and if they're satisfied, so I will be contacting you all this week. Let's see, next is,
Oh, yeah. Where's Jeremy?
is that? Where is mine? Ah, there it is. Got buried on me there. Financial report for the month of January 2023. Director, care to entertain us with that?
All right. Starting with the health insurance fund, for January 2023, our revenues were just over $390,000. Our expenditures were just shy of $360,000. It leaves the unexpended fund balance at $1,768,000. Our net year-to-date a positive $30,000. Moving on to income tax. Our estimate for the January 2023 was $997,000. We collected $1,017,000, so about $20,000 over our estimate. Looking, if you want to compare it from last year to this year for the month of January, we collected about $60,000 more from last year. Going to continue to monitor this. I think our estimate and actuals will get a little bit closer together. Our estimate is based upon a 10-year average. So I've been keeping tabs of, like, throughout each month what percentage of the collections for the years each month, and comparing how it differs from CCA to RETA. A lot of it, RETA's more spread out the back half of the year, so as those percentages changes, I think we'll fall into a little bit more agreement with estimate and actuals as we move further in time. We didn't have any transfers this month from the income tax to any of the funds, so once the budget passes, if it's this month, we'll start getting a lot of these transfers out to the all the departments that are requested in the budget. Moving on to the statement of cash receipts and disbursements. Just a couple funds in the negative. It's the 2 usual funds, the FEMA fund and the CDBG fund, both federal programs. Both funds, once we expend the money, we can get reimbursed through those federal programs, so nothing new really there. Moving on to the last 3 months of activity, you'll notice that the general fund balance went down again from last month to this month. Like I previously stated, no income tax transfer to the general fund, so that plays a part in it. Special revenue funds, you notice, did go up because of no transfers again this month. So enterprise funds went down slightly, but that's mostly due to the encumbrances outstanding. You'll see from last month to this month, it went up by about $425,000. And then looking at all other funds, why it did decrease, once again, that's due to encumbrances outstanding. We went from $109,000 last month up to $791,000 in encumbrances outstanding, so almost a $700,000 increase there, and that's what's drawing that unencumbered cash balance down there. Comparing January 2022 to January of 2023, you'll notice general funds up by about 7.5 million. A lot of that has to deal with the ARPA funds when we did the lost revenue, claiming the lost revenue. So that is playing the part there because I think we did that in March or April of last year. So we'll see that start to tighten up and actually probably go down some. Special revenue funds is down by about 2.2 million. Enterprise funds is roughly the same, and all other funds is up by about 600,000. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Director. No questions. Do I have a motion to call for the approval of the finance report?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Right. Well then, with that, is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee?
I have none.
From the body? From the gallery? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
You. We are adjourned at 7:22.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. That concludes our individual committee meetings for this evening. We'll take a 5-minute break and begin the committee of the whole. Thank you. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent. Council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. Today is Monday, February 6, 2023. This is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Citizens addressing council. This is where I would ask, but there is no.
There is none.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Committee reports. We'll start with street, sidewalk, and lighting. Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Streets, sidewalks, and lighting met this evening. All members of the committee were present. Council members were present except for Mrs. Fry and guests as noted on my sheet. We had 2 requests for legislation. The first one's a letter from Michael Tiadecki, city engineer, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to enter into a contract with Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the improvement of Worcester Road North / State Street, PID 108370. This is a final resolution. Emergency wording is requested, and this is the final legislation allowing the state, the city to contract with the state. That's going to be a big project, and that did come out of committee. The second piece of legislation I have is a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to enter into contract with Cargill Incorporated for the 2023 Street Road Salt Program. Emergency wording is requested, and we had a 2-year contract with them, 21-22, and that price was $59.17, and this year, a 1-year contract, it's the same amount, $59.17. And that also came out of committee. We had no pending legislation and no miscellaneous, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening at 6:09 here in council chambers with nothing new to report. We adjourned at 6:10. With that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. City Utilities, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities had a special meeting this evening. We met in chambers. We had a request from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Services, requesting legislation to authorize the mayor to utilize the 3 1-year options offered in the contract authorized by ordinance 8/2018 to enter into the contract with Kimball Recycling and Disposal, Inc. Emergency wording was requested, and we have a letter attached that was passed out of committee, and we'll be voting on that next week. The second was a letter from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Services, requesting legislation to amend the Barberton Codified Ordinance, Part 10, Title 6, Chapter 1060.808, the refuge collection and disposal, residential payment fees. That those were also on a separate letter, and that was passed out of committee, and we will be voting on that next week. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. Fry. She's absent. Co-chair is Mr. Griffin.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. All members present except Mrs. Fry. We met on January 23rd, 6:04 p.m. We had no requests for legislation for safety of last week. Do we have any comments for safety or anything?
This is your report.
We were adjourned at 6:05 PM last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
No idea what's happening.
Rules, Marketing, and Development. Mr. Griffin, when you can.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met last week, week before last, January 23rd. All members of my committee were present. We had no requests for new legislation. We do have a rule change amendments that were printed out. If anyone has any comments on the rule changes, which we'll be voting on next week, amendments. Have a copy?
Yeah, but,
We didn't call, or it wasn't
We
in.
didn't-
yeah, we're not in committee now, we're
No,
in reports, right?
Correct.
that's what we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we adjourned at 7:07. That I passed.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met this evening, February 6th, in council chambers at 6:08 PM. All members were present. All council members were present except Mrs. Fry. All others were noted. There were no new topics of requested legislation, no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties Parks Recreation met January 23rd at 6:02 council chambers. All members were present, and also other council members were present and noted. We had no new request for legislation. The only thing we had miscellaneous discussion was about the skate park, and updates are coming soon on that. And we adjourned at 6:04, and with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Finance and Personnel, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel is calling for the following: a legislation for the 2023 operating budget for the period beginning January 1st, 2023. 3 readings of emergency wording requested. In light of the presentations from the directors and the mayor and the satisfaction of the council, we will be reading this one time, voting next week. I have informed the clerk and the mayor that all questions have been answered and all councilors have consented. We also are moving forward with the approval of the financial report for the month of January 2023, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. That concludes our committee reports for this evening. Is there anything from council? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just some prayers for the families and victims in Syria and Turkey from that earthquake. And if you guys have any family over there or friends, prayers for them too. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Is there anything else from council? Department heads? I do have one thing. Mr. Elwood Palmer, we got notice today that there will be visitation on February 11th, 2023 from 10 a.m. to noon at Barberton High School, then followed by Celebration of Life on February 11th, 2023, starting at noon at the Barberton High School as well, and encourage everybody to attend if they can. Like Mr. Shorter said, we will be voting on, or attempting to vote on, the council rule changes, so please let Mr. Griffin know or myself, and we will have drafts out for the entire rule book, or at least the sections, but the entire rules changes, proposed changes, before we vote, so we can all kind of see it in writing. I don't have anything else, and mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to bring to council, we finally got our kind of plaque here for 2022 All-America City Award. This will go downstairs in my office next to the runner-up plaque that we received last year. So, talked to some employees out in Sacramento They were also one of the winners in the country. Kind of awesome to see. Barberton was at the top of the list. And they remember, I still stay in contact with some of them. We went out to Sacramento a number of years ago, met with the mayor and some of his staff, so it's kind of neat to be at the top of the list there. So I want to bring this up. Still trying to figure out what Mother Nature is going to decide to do here. So we've, so far this year, we've used 15 tons of patching material on potholes throughout the city. There's days where asphalt companies will open up and other days where you think they're going to open up and they don't. So we're doing everything we can to play catch up as weather permits, but also then going back and, you know, getting the trucks ready to spread salt and put the blades on. So, but 15 tons of cold patch so far this year. Change for Change was the other week. Brought in $670 for the Magics Ready to Learn at Angie's. Next Change for Change will be February 24th at Block 7, benefiting Coleman Health, which we do a lot of work with. Still taking people reservations for CPR classes on February 21st. That's limited to the first 30. We'll see how that goes. As I mentioned before, the goal is to have this monthly and kind of spread it out throughout the city. So different sections of town, different times, different days, so we can get a much larger pool of residents to take the class. And that's all free. Last week had the opportunity to meet with our Summit County prosecutor, Sherry Bevan Walsh and her team. They did a free women's self-defense class at the library. Well over 100 women showed up across all ages and demographics. It was a great showing. So that was another free event that she put on here in the community. I think it's the second or third that they've put on since COVID. That kind of put a stop to a lot of that. But what a great turnout. So hopefully more of those types of things that we can see from the county, working with the city here and the library and others moving forward. Also last week had the privilege of speaking in front of the Rotary Club here in town, able to share some of the projects and programs that are going on and that are planned for 23. What a great group of people, good feedback, and just a lot of work that they're doing here to better the Barberton community. If you saw the Akron Beacon Journal yesterday, former mayor of Fairlawn, Bill Roth, had a guest article in there talking about the critical need behind the plan to have fiber run throughout the county. And I've been mentioning this for quite a while, and this includes Barberton. So we continue to work through this process, working with all 31 communities here in Summit County and with the county taking the lead. This is going to impact all of us across the board for today's needs and long into the future. So if you haven't read the article, please, in Section A at the end, please read that. Talks about Fairlawn Gig that Mayor Roth started and his input and participation in this group. So whether it's safety related, education, new jobs, efficiency of government or others, and a million other direct and indirect benefits of running fiber throughout the community, we're 100% behind this and continue to meet with the county as they're taking the lead to have this happen. So continue to work on this, and obviously if any questions come up, please let me know, and I'll report back to you as things materialize. Just lastly, as pulling some stats, and just want you to think about this. 1 inch of rainfall equals 10 to 13 inches of snowfall. And if you remember in the past, there's been multiple days where we've had an inch of rain an hour or an inch of rain for a day, for multiple days, plus the ground is saturated. Imagine if that was all snowfall. We would be what Buffalo was a few weeks ago, where you had feet of snow. So when you put it in that perspective of what 1 inch of rain equals to 10 to 13 inches of snow, kind of puts things in a different perspective. Obviously rain is fluid and wet is going to move, but that makes it even almost worse because now you have certain areas that has literally 5 to 10 feet of water, and I'm not messing up, 5 to 10 feet of water, and other places could be dry because of the runoff. But those are the types of things that we have to account for with cleaning out inlets and making sure the water gets through the system, holding water back so we can kind of control it before it gets into the system, and then getting it out of the city down south. So just an interesting stat there I wanted to share. Other than that, appreciate all the feedback and questions on the budget. Again, if anything comes up over the rest of this week, please don't hesitate to reach out. And other than that, that's all I have, unless there's any questions now. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, this meeting is adjourned at 7:48 PM. Thank you.